Hi, this is Beverly Dale, and I'm here to talk to you about a pleasure centered Christianity, flourishing in our bodies. And the way we do that is one Bible verse at a time. I want to talk about nudity today, specifically about pornography in a time of stress and tension that we are in. So, some people get hung up about seeing naked bodies on a nude beach or in a magazine or in the daylight, keeping those times for when there's darkness. Or if they're strangers' bodies, maybe, like in a movie. Or nudity is okay only if it's limited to only one other adult that is their legally bound spouse. Okay? Well, but in Genesis, we are told that the first couple was naked and unashamed, as they were in the Garden of Eden, or the Garden of Earthly Delights, as the Eden means. So how we are to be is naked and unashamed, naked before God. So to be naked is to be vulnerable. And that's why they put on those fig leaves as soon as they realized that they weren't part of the creator, but part of the creation. So being vulnerable is only possible if there's an atmosphere of trust. Perhaps they weren't sure that seeing God as different from themselves, that could be trusted before they had the fruit. Of course, they didn't know that. Trust gives us confidence in our authenticity. So there's no need for shame. So we were made to be intimate with God, with love, to be vulnerable in the eyes of God because there's only love, and to trust in that, in the confidence that God is there with us. Love is always with us, loving us to our core, in spite of, because of, and in our nakedness. So we are to live without shame, in other words. Now, in the context of pornography, then, we have to look at our own shame that may get stirred up if we would be exposed to it. Or we may need to look at the context of our own trauma, that maybe we have been triggered by the use of pornography because of some bad experiences in our past. So there is much shame at using pornography. And that is what we need to look at. We won't look at it today, but just to acknowledge that that's what's going on for many people, and much judgment as well. So Christians can't look at other people's nakedness? Well, apparently not for most people. But let's go on. And note that in the states in which there is the highest degree of the most conservative religions, those are the places where porn is used the most. So we need to ask ourselves, what is that about? Right? I'm not going to answer that. Just pose it as a question. So what about porn? Is there anything redemptive about using pornography? Well, science will tell us that when couples use it together, there's no negative impact to their couples if they're using it together, or there is actually a positive impact with those couples. And they say that it improves their relationship to use erotica. That comes from science, all right? And let's go to our Bible. There's lots of nudity in the Bible. We usually don't hear sermons on that or think about it, but I think we are much more, we problematize nudity much more than Scripture does at all, because a fisherman at that time would always fish in the boats nude. Remember the time when Peter was told to come out into the water to join Jesus, and he had to put on his clothes first. He was nude. That's what they did. There was the observers in the garden, was a young man who left really fast when the soldiers came, and they tore off his coat, and he was nude as he ran away in the darkness. Baptisms were done in the nude. So Jesus would have been nude in front of a crowd of people watching him be baptized. Crucifixions were done in the nude. So Jesus was nude at Golgotha. King David danced in joy before lots of people, his subjects, so much so that the young women really appreciated what they were seeing. Right? So the Bible has lots of, underneath, has lots of little stories that tell us it wasn't really that hung up about the naked body. So, what about porn? Is there anything redemptive? Why would people use porn? Well, there are some very good reasons why one would use it. And one is it's a good stress release, assuming, of course, to watch or engage in pornography would also include self pleasure. So, to have an orgasm would be to reduce the tension in one's body. One would use pornography perhaps for pleasure if a partner is not available, or if somebody doesn't even have a partner. Um, it may add to our file folder of fantasies in creative ways, um, or just for good sex because it's our own body we're working with here. And we are our own best lovers. And sometimes that's just what we need. Okay. When is pornography use unhelpful? Well, primarily when it's used as sex education. Unfortunately, this is a huge deal for our young people. But pornography is entertainment and is based on fantasies. It's based on people acting in certain ways only because the cameras are there, only because of the angle of the cameras. People don't really act like what we see them doing in porn. It's staged, it's scripted with lighting. So, in other words, it will keep you ignorant. And if you have learned what you know about sexuality from watching porn, go get a good sex ed book and read it or take a class in it if you can still find a good comprehensive sex education class. Um, so, if also, there's another reason why we shouldn't use porn, and that is it follows stereotypes. It follows a dominance theme, so it's very heteronormative as a rule. I'm really talking about heterosexual oriented pornography here. There's a sexism to it and a racism, there's stereotyping of bodies, ableism. You're not going to find old people as a rule, so there's ageism in that. Um, and oftentimes then there's violence and lack of consent and gendered injustice. So people of faith have no business exposing themselves or ourselves to that kind of an industry that is objectifying people in a way for commercialization. So, commercialization of objectification means that there is little interest in bodily integrity of the performers. So, working conditions, what are they? What about on camera and off camera? Is there sensitivity to the employees? Um, and are young people being exploited or trafficked or coerced or abused? Those are questions that, as consumers in that billion-dollar industry, we would want to raise and not support. So there is ethically produced pornography with no exploitation and a real sensitivity and justice for the performers. And all you have to do is Google and look for how to find ethical porn, and you can find it. So that might help with some of this later that I mentioned, objectification of commercialization. So is pornography use right or wrong? Is it a sin or not? Well, if you haven't caught on yet, a pleasure-centered Christianity or progressive approach that to the body is first, we don't obey what other people think you should be doing or not doing. It's about spiritual discernment. The decisions that you make in your life, in your sexual life, is between you and the Creator. We stand alone before God, and you can't blame other people for the decisions that you make, right? So if you ask me that question, I can't and I won't answer it for you. I can only answer it for me because I'm the one who has my own conscience about what is right for my body, what is right for my time and place in where I am in my relationships or where I am in my spiritual journey. So, as we spiritually discern the uses of pornography, our faith needs to be in dialogue with our ethics, right? As I mentioned earlier, and with the findings of science. That's the reason part that the scripture has us deal with, to be wise, right? And we're not to have any judgment of other people. So, the reason I wanted to focus on pornography, and I will do several sessions on this topic, is because of the political stress that we are enduring in the United States right now. The political stress of having our democracy being torn apart piece by piece, department by department. People are afraid of losing their Social Security, about their health care, whether or not their job will be there in the next day, or veterans benefits. So we need to lower our stress level. And so pornography comes up in my mind. We need to lower our stress level. Why? Because when we are not stressed, we think more clearly. And we think more clearly, we'll be more likely to stay in touch with the soulful spirit part of our lives. That is the kind of kindness that we want to have towards other people. It will also keep us centered in ways to say, no, that's mean, that's bullying, and I will resist that. Or I will protect someone who is standing in the way of those people who are bullying or want to do something unjust and unfair. I think pornography use may well help you and me reduce our stress level. So I don't have a problem with self-pleasure. I know some of the conservative Christians do. But a pleasure-centered Christian faith takes seriously God's suggestion to consider the lilies of the field, the blooms that they have, or the birds of the air. So it's a sensual approach to life, to get in touch with gratitude at the beauty of life. And that includes all kinds of pleasure in our bodies and around us. So finding pleasure in our bodies or the bodies of others keeps us grounded in the present moment instead of, well, what if and what are they going to do next? No, stay in the present moment and in our bodies, because it's in our bodies that we begin to have a sense of gratitude about the gift of life, the smells, the tastes, the touches, with all of our senses. And if we stay in our bodies, then we'll be able to recognize the companionable intimacy that we have with others or with another. All of this reduces our stress and our tension and reminds us we were made for the garden of earthly delights. We were made to live naked and unashamed, to live vulnerably, trusting in love that does not judge but frees us to grow and flourish. So remember this. We are made in the image of God, and that includes genitalia, and it includes with or without clothing. It's all good. Pleasure is a gift from a pleasure-loving, pleasure-sharing God. Go in peace, my friend.